Hey, how's it going, guys? Blue Tempest here, and welcome to a very special video where I'm going to be listing off my top 20 manga series of all time. Now, this is an update to a video that I made a year ago where I did my top 10 manga of all time. So if you guys are interested to see what my list looked like a year ago, then you could definitely check that video out. But obviously it has been a full year since then, and I have 10 more manga series that I have added to my list. And as you would expect, the order of things is going to be a lot different from that original top 10 manga series video. Before we get into the video, I do just want to say that as you guys can see, I'm not in my usual setup. So I do want to apologize if there's any echo or anything like that in the audio. Hopefully it doesn't sound too bad, but I just was not able to record in my usual setup for this video, so hopefully you guys do understand. But either way, I did want to record this video for you guys, and I'm honestly just very excited to share this list. I also did want to say, if you guys do enjoy this video, then make sure to leave a like and also to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. All of my social media links are going to be listed down below in the description box, so definitely make sure to follow me on there. And you could also check out my anime list account, where I do update my manga list whenever I do read stuff. And I also rate any completed manga series on there, so you guys can get an idea of everything that I read and what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy. But with all of that out of the way, I do want to get started with this list. I'm going to try to go through these kind of fast because we have a lot of series to talk about here. And I did also want to say that the top 20 list is going to be ranked from number 20 all the way to my number 1 manga series of all time as of the end of 2022. All right, and so before we get into the actual list, I do have 2 series here that I am currently reading, but I just haven't read enough of them for me to consider them for this list. Now, these are both really quality series from what I have read so far, and they probably would have made this list if I had finished them. So I did want to shout them out. The 2 series in question are Yu Yu Hakusho and Monster. So yes, these are 2 series that I'm currently reading. I'm loving both of them, but I don't feel like I could rank them on this list just yet. Although I do want to say that I do have some other series that I have not yet completed that are going to be on this list, but I have read a decent chunk of those, enough for me to know where they would land, but that just wasn't the case for these 2 series. So moving into the actual top 20 list. At the number 20 spot, we have Astra Lost in Space, which is just a really fun blend of slice of life, sci-fi, and comedy. There's honestly a little bit of everything in this series, and honestly it was just a really fun ride. Also a very short series at 5 volumes, so not a big commitment, and I definitely recommend this series. Next up, at the number 19 spot, we do have Twin Star Exorcist, which is a series that I talk about all the time, and I always mention just how criminally underrated this series is. I have been seeing a couple of other manga tubers start to read this, like Suki Notes, so I am very happy about that because I know that she has been enjoying it. But yes, Twin Star Exorcist, while I am not fully caught up to the series, from what I have read so far, this is a fantastic battle shonen manga with honestly some of the best art that I have seen in a shonen manga in general. I just love Tsukeno's art style. It is just super clean, and like I said, the action, characters, and just the whole story of the series is just really a fun ride. So I cannot wait to get more into Twin Star Exorcist. I need to catch up, as I think once I do catch up, I could definitely see the series going even higher up on this list. But moving on, we do have Spirit Circle at the number 18 spot. Now, Spirit Circle is another shonen manga, but it is a really interesting one. Now, this is a fantasy story that deals with reincarnation. This is by Satoshi Mizukami, and I'm looking forward to getting more into some of his other works in 2023, but Spirit Circle is another pretty short series at 6 volumes, and it's just a really unique concept for a shonen manga. I don't want to say too much about this because I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but this is definitely worth reading if you guys like fantasy stories. All right, so moving on, at the number 17 spot, we have Parasite. Yes, so Parasite is a classic manga series. It blends together elements of action, mystery, sci-fi, and horror. There is a lot of body horror in this series, so it's definitely not for the faint of heart, but the art style is presented in a very classic, like 80s, 90s style, which I personally really like. And yeah, Parasite is a series that I think has definitely stuck with me after finishing it, and I honestly cannot wait to reread this one as well. I probably will wait until all of the full color editions are out. I do plan on collecting those because yeah, this is a really awesome series, and it's just a staple that I feel like most manga fans should definitely read. So at number 16, we do have Made in Abyss. This is another series that I really need to catch up on, but from what I've read so far, this is a truly disturbing manga. I mean, the concept is really interesting, but also there are a lot of trigger warnings in this series, so I definitely wouldn't recommend this for the faint of heart. There's a lot of gore and violence and action and just very dark and twisted things that happen in this manga. But because of those things, I do think this is an exceptional manga series. The atmosphere is completely different from anything else that I have read, and the world building is absolutely mind-blowing as well. You do also have some really standout characters in this series, and the artwork is one of the main reasons why the series is so disturbing, because as you can see from the cover, it looks like a very cheery shonen series, but no, this is a very dark and twisted seinen, masked by the very cutesy art style. So yeah, I definitely want to read more Made in Abyss. I gotta get caught up on it, but for now, this is in the number 16 spot on my list. All right, so next up we have a series that I read just a few months ago, and that is A Silent Voice. This is a beautiful manga series, kind of a coming of age story about a kid who bullies a girl that is deaf. She cannot hear or speak at all, and it's basically him trying to redeem himself and correct his wrongs from the past. And it is just an absolutely beautiful story. Like I said, this definitely is a tearjerker, and it's definitely one that I could see going up higher on my list once I reread it, as I feel like this is one of those series that is very rereadable. But for now, it is on my number 15 spot, and I mean, I'm sure you guys have all heard of A Silent Voice, as it is one of the most critically acclaimed manga series out there, and has a very critically acclaimed movie adaptation as well, which I also want to watch at some point. But yes, I'm very glad I was able to experience A Silent Voice, especially with these amazing deluxe editions. But yeah, this is a beautiful story that everybody should read. Next up, we have a complete change of pace, and that is yet another very dark and twisted manga, and that series is going to be Blood on the Tracks. Now, spoiler alert, this is the first of multiple series by Shuzo Oshimi that are going to be on this list. As some of you guys may know, Oshimi is my favorite mangaka of all time. So obviously there's going to be a number of series of his on my list, but Blood on the Tracks is one that I could see honestly being one of my top favorites, but because it's still ongoing and the other series that I'm going to talk about by Oshimi that are on this list are completed series, I have this at my number 14 for now. But like I said, this has been quite the wild ride. I honestly don't want to mention really specifically what this story is about, but this is a psychological thriller slash drama series about a mother and her son. And yeah, it just kind of goes really crazy. It gets really dark and really stressful in a way, but it is just a fantastic manga series. I mean, the art is incredible and the storytelling definitely keeps me on the edge of my seat. I really never know what's about to happen. Honestly, I do think that Oshimi is going to be writing his magnum opus with this series. Just from what I can already tell, this is going to be a modern classic manga series, and it's already Oshimi's longest manga to date and still going. From what I understand, with like only 13 volumes out in Japan so far, that only covers the prologue of the story. So I cannot wait to see what happens next with Blood on the Tracks. So next up, we're going to talk about a manga series that I actually don't have physically, and that is because I read it on the Shonen Jump app. Now, this is a series that I am planning to collect physically at some point. But the series in my number 13 spot is going to be Blue Flag. Now, Blue Flag is an amazing manga series that I implore you guys to read, especially if you have the Shonen Jump app. I mean, you have really nothing to lose. It's a very short manga series at 8 volumes. And if you're into coming of age stories that sprinkle a lot of drama and romance and just, you know, characters trying to figure out what their next steps in life are gonna be, then I would definitely highly recommend Blue Flag. Now, this also is a manga that has, in my opinion, some amazing representation of LGBTQ plus characters. And while a lot of people seem to not really like the ending, but personally, I honestly did not really find many, if any, issues with the ending myself personally. So, you know, if you've heard from other people that the ending is bad, I would still recommend you guys to read this series and to make your own opinion on it, because yeah, Blue Flag is a fantastic manga series, and as you guys can see, it is one of my favorites. One other thing that I do want to mention about Blue Flag before we move on to the next manga on my list is that Blue Flag has some of the most relatable and real characters in manga. I think that the discussions that are brought up in Blue Flag are really, really important topics, and it's something that you don't really see in a lot of manga series, and that's why Blue Flag definitely stands out in the midst of a lot of the other manga series that are on this list. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next manga series on my top 20 list, which is going to be Satoshi Kon's Opus. Now, this is the only single volume / one-shot manga on this list. This is the entire series right here. Satoshi Kon, you guys may recognize him as being the mastermind behind many classic anime films such as Perfect Blue, but before he was a film director, he was a mangaka, and this was a series that Satoshi Kon never truly finished. It did get canceled, if I'm not mistaken, and after his untimely passing, they were able to find some rough sketches of seemingly a sort of ending to the series. And it's just honestly really mind-blowing how perfectly it wraps up the manga, in my opinion. I think this is one of the trippiest and honestly most mind-bending manga series that I have ever read. I mean, there's a lot of things that Satoshi Kon does in Opus that I have never seen done in other manga series. I mean, this manga series like breaks the fourth wall and stuff, and it just, honestly, I don't want to ruin it for you guys. You guys just need to read this manga series. It's one of the most cinematic series that I've ever read as well. Like, honestly, it kind of reads like as if you're watching one of his films. So I highly, highly recommend you guys to check out Satoshi Kon's Opus. All right, and at my number 11 spot, we have Happiness, which is the second manga from Shuzo Oshimi that is on this list. Now, Happiness is an interesting change of pace for Oshimi, as this is more of a series rooted in fantasy as it deals with vampires. And I will say that this is not your typical vampire manga. It goes to some really dark places and really interesting places. Honestly, the second half of this manga took me off guard. I honestly did not expect the direction that the story went, and it really surprised me in that regard. Also, Happiness does include some of Oshimi's best artwork in general. I mean, the covers for the series are absolutely stunning. And I do think that Happiness is a great introductory manga to get into Oshimi's work. So if you're interested, I would highly recommend Happiness. Like I said, it is a vampire story with a psychological twist to it. So yeah, if you haven't read this, definitely check it out. All right, so now we are in my top 10. So getting into it, we have another Oshimi manga that I thought was just a little bit better than Happiness, and that is Inside Mari. Now this is one that I recently completed and reread all the way through since we did finally get the final volume of this series this month. So maybe there's a little bit of recency bias, but honestly, I did enjoy the story of Inside Mari a little bit more than Happiness. While I do think Happiness has an amazing aesthetic, and I think the artwork in Happiness is incredible, Inside Mari's story is where it's at for me. I think the characters, the progression of the story, and the whole mystery behind it was just done really, really well in my opinion. And this is definitely one that I recommend to you guys to binge if you haven't read it at all. Now, I will say there are a lot of trigger warnings in the series, so definitely look into those before reading it. But basically, Inside Mari is Shuzo Oshimi's take on the body swap genre. And his take is just one of the most interesting and unique takes that I've ever seen on that topic. So yes, Inside Mari is my number 10 manga series of all time. And then next up, we have a really big one. This should be no surprise to anybody who has watched any of my videos, as the number 9 series on my list is going to be Chainsaw Man. Yes, this is the behemoth that is one of the most popular manga series out there right now. And I am fully caught up to this story with part 2 that just started this year. And I have been absolutely loving Chainsaw Man. This was a crazy ride from the get-go. Part 1 was incredible, and I have just absolutely been loving the direction of part 2 as well. So yeah, this is a really fun series. Honestly, it is super hyped up, but I think it's hyped up for good reason. This is easily one of my favorite shonen series of all time. And in number 8, we do have Berserk. Now, this is one that hopefully you guys aren't mad at me for being this low. Obviously, Berserk is one of the most highly praised series of all time. This is a lot of people's number 1 favorite manga series. And the reason for it being this low on this list is because I haven't caught up to Berserk. I've only really read up to the Golden Age arc and a little bit of the Conviction arc, but I need to get back on Berserk. I'm planning on potentially rereading it from the beginning and then just kind of going all the way through what's released of the deluxe editions. But from what I've read of Berserk, obviously it is amazing. Like, it is definitely one of the best manga series I've ever read. It still made my top 10, so yes, this is an incredible manga. And I do want to say, every single manga on this list I think is great, and I recommend all of them, obviously. But Berserk, the Golden Age arc, I mean, it was one of the best arcs that I've ever read in any series, and also one of the most brutal. But I think that Kentaro Miura has created an undeniable masterpiece with Berserk, and I cannot wait to read more of it. All right, so my number 7 is going to be Eyes. Now, this is my favorite romance manga of all time. I don't think that this manga is necessarily going to be for everybody, but I just absolutely love the way that this manga was written. I think it does shonen romance so perfectly, and the art and just the different, scenarios that these characters get into are fantastic. I think all of the characters definitely have a place in this series. And I've been singing this series praises for a very long time, and yeah, it's an incredible manga series. I cannot wait to reread it. All of these series I definitely want to reread, but Eyes is a beautiful, beautiful romance manga. And honestly, there's not really much else I could say, as I've talked about the series numerous times on this channel. But yes, if you guys haven't read Eyes, and if you have the means to read it, because I know that some of the volumes are out of print and stuff like that, I would definitely recommend reading this series, as like I said, it does shonen romance right, in my opinion. All right, so at my number 6 spot, not quite hitting my top 5, is gonna be Gantz. Now, this is a series that I could honestly see being in my top 5 once I complete it. I've only read up to the 9th omnibus. I think I'm going to wait until all of the rest of the omnibuses are out, and then I'm just going to reread the series from the beginning and binge it all the way to the end. So we'll see where this series will land in my list once I do, make another one of these videos. But Gantz, as of right now, is still very high on my list and one of my favorite series of all time, just from what I've read so far. I mean, this is one of the craziest rides that I've ever been on when it comes to a manga series. And this is another one that is not going to be for the faint of heart. There's a lot of gore, action, violence, nudity, very dark and disturbing things, and the monsters that the characters fight in this series are also completely terrifying. This is a manga series that I just cannot put down. I highly recommend this if you like action, if you're a seinen fan. I mean, this is an amazing manga series, and I cannot wait to read the ending of it. I haven't heard the best things about the end, but honestly, just from what I've read so far, there's no way that this isn't going to be still one of my favorite manga series of all time, just from what I've read so far. So yes, highly recommend Gantz if you're into sci-fi, action, and just a really fast-paced story. All right, and we have made it to my top 5 manga series of all time. So to start with my number 5, we do have Land of the Lustrous. Man, this is a beautiful manga series. Honestly, I could see this being potentially even higher depending on how it ends. This is still ongoing. I've read all 11 volumes that are out. And yeah, I mean, this is an amazing manga series. I just love the main character of Foss in the series. This does have one of the most unique art styles that I've ever seen in manga, and the story and the writing in this is just amazing. I have no words to describe how much I love this manga series. And while I don't think that it's necessarily going to be for everyone, I do think that most people should give this a shot and give it a few volumes, because it is a little slow in the beginning, but there's a reason for that. And once you get into this manga series, you just cannot put it down. I mean, Land of the Lustrous, again, it is a manga series that I could honestly see being a masterpiece for me once it completes. So yeah, I'm just really excited to see where this manga series is going to go from here on out. So moving on to my number 4, it's going to be a series that I am just absolutely so grateful that I was able to read this year. This is a series that honestly has everything that I love in a series. It has amazing characters, incredible artwork, a really engaging and intriguing story that mixes elements of mystery, action, adventure, comedy, really everything that you could even think of is in this manga series. And the series in question is Dorohedoro. Yes, Dorohedoro is an amazing series, and it is my number 4 series on this list, and for good reason. Like I said, this mixes everything that I love in a manga series. I did a full in-depth review of Dorohedoro, so if you guys are interested to hear some more in-depth thoughts, I would highly recommend you guys to check that video out. It is one of the videos that I'm the most proud of that I have made in 2022, so I would really appreciate you guys if you did check it out, and I don't spoil anything in that video either. But yes, Dorohedoro, it is just one of the grimiest and grittiest series that has some of the most endearing characters that I have ever read about, and the story just goes to some crazy places, but it's just such a fun and wild ride throughout. I would say if you're a fan of Chainsaw Man, then definitely read Dorohedoro, because I get very similar vibes from both series. So yeah, this is definitely one of those series that needs to be talked about more. I just absolutely loved this manga. But another manga that I absolutely love, and that is my number 3 manga series of all time. This is my favorite ongoing series, and that is Hunter x Hunter. Yes, the classic shonen series that is finally back after a 4-year hiatus. I mean, what is there to say about this series? Hunter x Hunter is a series that I'm sure a lot of you guys know about. Maybe you haven't read it, but I highly implore you guys to read it, as this is just one of the best shonen series ever in general that I have ever read. I mean, the progression of the story just keeps getting more and more complex as it goes on, but it just keeps getting more satisfying as it goes on. I mean, the beginnings of the story are just a fun ride, a fun adventure shonen, and then it kind of goes into really dark territory once you get into the Chimera Ant arc, and then all the stuff that's going on currently in the manga. It's just amazing. The cast of characters is some of the best I've ever seen in any shonen manga. The villains in this manga are also incredible. And while a lot of people complain about the artwork, personally, I find the artwork kind of charming. Yes, there are some rough spots, but you know, Togashi makes up for it with how amazingly written this story is. And again, not much I could say aside from just it being one of my favorite series of all time. And like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm currently reading Yu Yu Hakusho, which is from the same mangaka, and I'm also enjoying that. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of love that I have for Togashi, and Hunter x Hunter is definitely always going to be one of my favorite shonen series of all time. All right, so getting into the top 2 series on my list. These are both series that I have rated 10 out of 10. And yeah, I do believe that these are both masterpiece series in my opinion. And these are both series that have really impacted me and just impacted the way that I view manga in general. But the series in my number 2 spot is one that I have talked about numerous times throughout the course of me making videos on this channel. So it is a series that's gonna come to no surprise to a lot of you guys, as it was my number 1 series when I did make my top 10 manga list last year, and that series is The Flowers of Evil. So yes, we do have yet another Shuzo Oshimi work, and obviously this is my favorite work of his. Now, Flowers of Evil is a series that has definitely impacted me and has stuck with me till this day since I have read it. And you know, it is yet another series that I don't know if everybody's going to really relate to or really, you know, understand, but I just personally really loved this series. Now, Flowers of Evil is a psychological manga. I don't really want to go into everything that exactly happens, but you know, this is a very dark series, and I think this is a masterpiece of a series. It's a beautiful story. Now, I will say that the beginning of the story, you know, caught me by surprise, and I'm sure that will be the same for a lot of people, as yeah, this is a manga series that will make you feel uncomfortable. And you know, it all makes sense once you read the entirety of it, because you know, once you get to the second half of the story, it really changes the perspective of the events that take place in the beginning. This is, like I said, a psychological thriller manga. This series also has a lot to do with topics such as sexuality and depression. And yeah, while it's not the happiest manga out there, I will say that this manga also had a perfect ending, and it was just an amazing ride all throughout. I just could not stop reading and putting the series down when I first read it, and I just cannot wait to continue rereading this series for years to come. So yes, Flowers of Evil is my number 2 manga series on this list. All right, and we have made it to my number 1 manga series of all time as of the end of 2022. This series is one that I read very early on this year, and it has honestly changed the way I view manga. This is not only the best manga that I have ever read, but it's also one of the best pieces of any media that I have ever consumed. I truly believe that this manga transcends past just being a manga. Like, this is a work of art. And you know, all of these series on this list are a work of art as well, but this series is special, and it's one that really resonated with me. Now, I know a lot of people seem to not like this manga. You know, you either love it or you hate it, but in my case, I absolutely loved this manga series, and it was just an amazing ride throughout. That series in question is going to be Good Night Pun Pun by Inio Asano. Now, what is there to say about this manga that hasn't already been said? You know, a lot of people know this as being a very, very depressing manga series, which it's true, it is. But honestly, this has so much that you could unpack from this manga. You know, the story is just absolutely incredible. I cannot wait to reread it because I'm sure that there's a lot of things that I may have missed and that I will catch on a second read through. This also has some of the most amazing and unique art that I've ever, you know, witnessed when reading a manga series. And the way that Pun Pun is portrayed as this little bird character, whereas everybody else is portrayed, you know, as just being, you know, regular humans, it's just genius in my opinion. I just absolutely love everything about this manga series. I mean, I cannot stress it enough. I do think this is a masterpiece. And you know what? It may be a slow burn, but you know, once you get into it, you just cannot stop reading. I just couldn't put the series down. And you know, it did take me to some very dark places, I will say. So this isn't for the faint of heart. I would definitely recommend looking up trigger warnings, as this is a very dark and twisted manga series. But it was just absolutely incredible. So yes, Good Night Pun Pun is my #1 series of all time. I wasn't sure if anything would have been able to top Flowers of Evil for me, but this series definitely did it. And I can't wait to see what my list next year is gonna look like, because I'm going to definitely be reading a lot more manga. So yes, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Let me know what your top 20, top 10, top 5, just in general, your favorite manga series of all time down in the comments. I would love to know what you guys think. If you guys have read any of these series that I have mentioned today, also feel free to let me know your thoughts on them. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.